S&P's report on Middle East and African banks and their exposure to the Russia-Ukraine conflict reaffirms that most banks across the MEA region will suffer little direct fallout from the Russia-Ukraine conflict. This is due to their limited dealings with Russian and Ukrainian counterparties. However, some vulnerabilities do exist, and we're joined by Dr. Mohammed Damak, Senior Director at S&P Global Ratings. Thanks so much for being with us today, Dr. Damak. Now, the impact of the conflict will be limited in Saudi as banking system growth is really fueled by mortgages and corporate lending there, and also linked to Vision 2030. Saudi will also be boosted by higher oil prices. So what do you forecast for Saudi's economy for 2022?
Thank you for having me. I think for Saudi Arabia, we expect GDP growth to be strong in 2022 as both oil price and production are expected to be higher than what we have observed in 2021. The rise in oil price due to the Russia-Ukraine conflict and the OPEC decision to stick to its production plan will keep growth firm in our view. For the non-oil sector, I think growth will also likely be firm, led by growth in sectors such as the construction with the implementation of Vision 2030 projects, travel which is slowly recovering as Hajj and Umrah are expanding in numbers, manufacturing and transportation, and also communication. And as the global economy rebounded in 2021 and oil demand and prices began to pick up, we estimate that the Saudi real GDP grew by 3.3% in 2021, and we forecast that it will grow by 5.8% in 2022.
Incredible numbers there, 5.8%. Now, in the UAE, your report says conflict will have a limited effect on the banking sector here as well, and the government would provide support if needed. And you expect real GDP growth here to be 3.8% this year. What will be the main contributors to that growth?
Right. High oil price, supportive government policies, normalizing non-oil activities will all support the UAE economy in 2022. I think the economic sentiment is improving here because of the high oil price and the way the country has managed the pandemic. The real estate sector, which has been under a lot of pressure in the past few years, has started to recover, although it remains to be seen to what extent the existing oversupply will challenge this recovery. Hospitality and travel sectors are recovering, but would take longer to get back to the pre-pandemic level. And here I think Expo 2020 has certainly helped these two sectors, and now it remains to be seen to what extent these sectors will benefit from the inflow of people from Russia and Ukraine.
Okay, we will wait and see. And conversely, Egypt's banking sector is exposed by its reliance on wheat and other staple food imports. What does the government really need to do there to mitigate damage to the economy?
Right. As rating agencies, we do not advise any of the rating issuers on what they need to do or what they don't need to do. But in Egypt, what we have observed is that the government support through increased subsidies could be vital in mitigating the damage of the increase in commodity prices on the economy. However, this could have an impact on the fiscal metrics. As you probably know, Egypt imports 85% of its wheat from Russia and Ukraine. And it's important to note that Egypt and the IMF have recently begun discussion a program in order to alleviate the effect of the higher commodity prices on the Egyptian economy. As for the banking system, we don't think that the impact on the asset quality is likely to be significant. I think FX lending is less than 20% of total loans in Egypt, and it's usually granted for exporters. And as such, we don't see a major increase in credit losses. And on the funding side, we don't expect any impact because the banking system in Egypt is in a net external asset position, and banks fund themselves primarily through core customer deposits.
Okay, now besides Egypt, tell us about the few emerging markets where you observed significant vulnerabilities.
Right. I think among the 8 countries that we looked at, the most vulnerable are Turkey and Tunisia for different reasons. Turkey, a commodity importer, inflation is already high. Trade and tourism link with Russia and Ukraine are significant. 27% of tourist arrivals in 2021 were from these 2 countries. And more importantly, the banking system in Turkey has a high external debt and is dependent on rollover. I think this risk is an important risk. It's not new. And we think that the combination of higher rates, and lower investor appetite could result in lower rollover rates. Now, it's important to mention that the Turkish banking system has sufficient amount of foreign currency liquidity to handle lower rollover rate, but these are placed to the central bank and with the government, which could restrict their availability in a stress scenario. Now, in Tunisia, the challenge here is related to the financing of the large twin deficit of the country, which is further increasing because of the higher commodity prices. Now, the country has been in negotiation with the IMF for almost a year now, and it remains to be seen whether they will be able to strike a deal. The direct impact on the banking system is limited because they don't have any, or they have limited exposure to counterparties from Russia and Ukraine. And the dependence of the banking system on external funding is fairly limited. But the system is already suffering from a weak asset quality and a high cost of risk, and has also high exposure to the sovereign.
Dr. Mohammed Damak, thanks so much for joining us today.
Thank you very much for having me.